Chapter 1067 Lou Deig's Ability. When Lou Deigh was at sea, he showed amazing wisdom and courage. He used his own means to turn the tide and defeated the alliance of stowaways on the ship. Once such a person gains power, it will definitely not be a problem for him to become a leader. Zhang Yi admires him very much. If he really has the ability, he can be promoted. Fatty Su held his fat belly with both hands and said seriously, "But is this person reliable?" Zhang Yi asked back, "Are you talking about his loyalty?" Fatty Su nodded, "Yes, after listening to you, I think this person is very cruel. It seems that he is not easy to control." Zhang Yi smiled. "Stupid people are not easy to control. He is a very smart person, so loyalty or not is not important. He has no expectations for the so-called human nature. Loyalty is nothing more than a dedication to obtain the greatest benefit. As long as there are enough chips for betrayal, loyalty is worthless. He is not stupid, so as long as my strength is strong enough, his loyalty will always exist." Which of the several major bases in Tianhai City was not conquered by Zhang Yi? At first, they wanted to destroy Zhang Yi's shelter, but now they are all very honest. Hearing this, Fatty Su scratched his head and said, "Boss, you're smart. You have an extraordinary vision when looking at things." Zhang Yi glanced at him unhappily. "You are also a Delta-level alien now. Do you want me to give you a base and let you manage it?" Hearing this, Fatty Su was so scared that sweat broke out on his face and shook his head repeatedly. "Don't do it. I am not that kind of material. It's really troublesome to manage it. It's nothing like now. I have food and drink, and I can play video games every day." Zhang Yi sighed. Sometimes, he really envied Fatty Su for living a carefree life. "You can go to Blizzard City for massage when you have nothing to do, right?" Zhang Yi said teasingly. Fatty Su glanced at the others embarrassedly. The women in the family laughed at this. Although they didn't say anything, they still looked down on Fatty Su's behavior in their hearts. Fatty Su stammered, I did that for cultivation, to temper my will." His voice got smaller and smaller, and Zhang Yi did not expose him. "We are all men, and it is better to be clear about some things. Fatty Su cannot be blamed for this. If you really like a girl one day, bring her back. They will let her go for my sake. Then we can build you an independent house." Zhang Yi didn't mind Fatty Su finding true love outside. It's just that they will definitely have to separate at that time. After all, Zhang Yi is still a germaphobe in this regard. Unlike Uncle Yu and Aunt Zhou, they have a big age difference with Zhang Yi, so living together is not awkward. Hearing this, Fatty Su immediately sat upright on the sofa and said seriously, "No, boss. I have figured it out a long time ago. I won't find a girlfriend. Anyway, it's this time. No one is urging me to get married, let alone the issue of having children. Why should I find one alone?" He raised a finger and said with an experienced look, "When you have a girlfriend, you can only have one girlfriend. But if you don't have a girlfriend, you can have countless girlfriends." Fatty Su's perverse reasoning stunned everyone. Zhang Yi nodded. "It makes sense. That's it." After being hurt by Su Lily, Fatty Su had completely lost his illusions about love. At this time, he was very open-minded. It was enough for him to go to Blizzard City to experience life. The kitchen was still preparing the banquet. Zhang Yi thought that Lou Deigh and the other two had been waiting for a long time. It would be impolite to leave them alone. It was okay in the past, but now he was also a gentleman with status and position, so he had to pretend in front of his younger brother. He stood up and asked the others to study the magical effects of the source spirits, and then went to talk to Lou Deigh and the other two. Zhang Yi pushed the door and walked into the room. The three of them wolfed down all the food on the table. They looked very embarrassed, with food residues on their bodies and beards, just like beggars. Zhang Yi smiled, and the three of them were a little embarrassed, and hurriedly stood up to greet him. "Mr. Zhang, thank you. Thank you for your hospitality." Zhang Yi stretched out his hand to signal them to sit down. "It's okay, sit down and talk." Then he asked Yang Xia to bring some more food. The three of them squeezed on a sofa. Their expressions were very restrained, but at the same time they were full of strong expectations. If Lou Deigh was not old, he would have wanted to kneel down and say to Zhang Yi, "Mr. Zhang, I heard that you don't have a son. I want to take care of you in your old age." Zhang Yi looked at the three people in front of him and asked calmly, "Is Lou Deigh the only one who has awakened his superpowers?" Lei and Yu Gang nodded, with some regret in their eyes. They did not awaken their superpowers, which meant that they could not have any great future in the Qiaoyu base. Zhang Yi nodded, then opened the dimensional door and took out the body of a strange person. This strange person was a member of the Scylla Strange Person team, probably a disciple of the Spider Demon, and his ability index was not high, only more than 5,000. Beyond, however, Zhang Yi, out of habit of cleaning up the battlefield, still took him away. Zhang Yi placed the body of the man in front of Lou Deigh and then said to him, "Try to put your hand on his head and see." When Lou Deigh saw the body, he didn't understand why Zhang Yi asked him to do this. But he still did it honestly. When his right hand was placed on the head of the corpse, Zhang Yi's eyes were also carefully watching his reaction. Suddenly, Lou Deig's eyes widened, and a stream of heat quickly flowed into his body along his arm. It was an indescribable feeling. In an instant, his body was full of strength, as if something was rushing in his blood vessels. The powerful force dissipated most of his fatigue. Zhang Yi's eyes showed a satisfied look. "You are lucky. Lou Deigh does have a talent above Delta, which means that he is worth being cultivated." After Lou Deigh absorbed the essence of the corpse, he felt comfortable all over. Of course, he understood that this was a gift from Zhang Yi. The sensible Lou Deigh immediately knelt down in front of Zhang Yi, and his head banged on the ground. "Thank you, Mr. Zhang, for the promotion. I, Lou Deigh, will serve you wholeheartedly from now on." Lou Deigh is a smart man. He knows that he must seize the opportunity given to him by Zhang Yi. This may be the beginning of his comeback. Zhang Yi smiled slightly. He vaguely saw some of his cautious self in this man. "Just be clear in your heart. Follow me well in the future. I won't treat you unfairly." Chapter 1068, The Great Mutation Era. Zhang Yi reached out and pulled Lou Deigh up. "You're all dirty. Go take a shower. We can talk about other things after you take a shower." Zhang Yi took the three of them to the bathroom at the back and threw them a set of clean new clothes. The three of them walked into the bathroom of more than 50 square meters, took a long-awaited hot shower, and then changed into brand new clothes. Yu Gang and Lei excitedly said to Lou Deigh, "Brother, we will be rich in the future. Follow Mr. Zhang. We will be able to walk sideways in the whole Tianhai city in the future." Lou Deigh looked at the two Muggle brothers. Although he was happy in his heart, his face did not show too much excitement. "Mr. Zhang promoted us because I am now an alien and have that value. But if we don't do well in the future, he can always replace us with someone else. So, we have to work harder in the future to let Mr. Zhang see our abilities." He took a deep breath and looked up at the bright ceiling. "I must consider whether this is my only chance in this life to change my destiny." Lei and Yu Gang nodded in agreement. Zhang Yi was outside, calling Zhou Kur over, and then said to Zhou Kur, "Take some blood from those people for a test later. See how their physique is and whether the two next to them have the potential to become aliens." Zhou Kur heard what Zhang Yi was planning. "You want to see their potential? But we don't have such advanced technical means at present." Zhou Kur spread her hands and expressed her helplessness. Although she is skilled in medicine and has studied biology, she is not very good at studying the field of aliens. After all, this kind of emerging scientific research often requires a large organization to concentrate its efforts. "Take some blood first, and I'll go to Blizzard City to ask Deng Shintong later," Zhang Yi said. Lou Deig's potential is definitely above Delta, and there is a very small probability that it is above Epsilon. Although it is a low-probability event, Zhang Yi must have a thorough grasp of the person he decides to use. This is the only way to avoid backlash in the future. Lou Deigh and the other two finished washing and changed into new clothes. However, after years of exposure to the wind and sun, their dark skin is still hard to change, but it is a little fresher than when they first came to the shelter. Zhang Yi took them to do simple tests such as blood tests and physical fitness. The three people did not dare to have any doubts and cooperated with Zhang Yi. Then, Zhang Yi said, "Don't go back to Chaoyu base for the time being. I will take you to Qingpu base for a while later. This is done to protect them." Chen Jingguan's strength is not enough, and he has always had a strong sense of crisis. Now that Zhang Yi brought Lou Deigh back to the shelter, Chen Jingguan would inevitably be suspicious. If Lou Deigh and the other two were sent back at this time, it is not ruled out that Chen Jingguan would kill them. Of course, Lou Deigh and the other two all obeyed Zhang Yi's arrangements. At this time, the meals at home were almost ready. Lou Deigh and the other two could smell the fragrant aroma in the living room, and it was inevitable that they were a little lingering. Zhang Yi planned to eat this meal with his family, and it was somewhat abrupt to bring the three of them. So Yang Xia and Zhou Jaime divided some of the food and sent it to them in the cabin so that they could eat alone. The three of them were so happy. Today's meal was the most delicious meal they had ever eaten since the end of the world. Zhang Yi sat at the table with his family and started the feast happily. Huahua and Lele also had their own rice bowls. But Huahua sat at the table and ate with Zhang Yi, while Lele had to squat beside the table to eat. At the dinner table, Zhang Yi told them what happened on Qingdao. Most of the plots were just mentioned briefly, but when it came to the black-armored monster they met later, Zhang Yi mentioned a few more words. "Everything was in my plan, except that guy. It was a huge accident." Yang Xinxin couldn't help but frown slightly when she heard Zhang Yi's explanation. "This is very strange," she explained to everyone. "There are two conditions for the emergence of powerful aliens. The first is that they have high enough talent. The second is that they have enough resources to grow. So, there is no shortage of talented aliens in this world, but there is an extreme shortage of powerful aliens. I don't know how many talented people died in the cold apocalypse before they had the chance to show their strength. So far, the number of Epsilon aliens in Huashu country is unknown, but it is estimated to be in the single digits. Colombia has the most advanced biological technology, but they have only successfully cultivated one Cadillac in their fleet." She raised her own doubts. Then, that black-armored monster has an amazing combat power of more than 20,000 points. A weak country like Qingdao has experienced a large-scale biological extinction event. How did such an existence appear? Zhang Yi said, "I have also considered this problem. The only explanation is that the source of God may have some abilities that we don't know." Yang Xinxi nodded. "Maybe, but for you, brother, isn't the source of God more than just a key? Relying solely on the source of God cannot give people such powerful power." Chapter 1069 Quiet Changes. After finishing the meal, Zhang Yi returned to his room to rest. Yang Xinxin and Zhou Qir came to Zhang Yi's room. Everyone took off their shoes and socks and sat on the carpet. They mainly reported to Zhang Yi about some recent developments in Tianhai City. Zhang Yi was usually lazy and didn't bother to take care of the affairs of other bases. But Yang Xinxin and the others couldn't sit still. Because they were usually at home, in order to show their abilities, they helped Zhang Yi manage the three major bases. Zhang Yi didn't ask about these things, so they just let them do it as long as they didn't interfere too much. Anyway, the shelter didn't need them to provide any resources. However, after listening to Yang Xinxin's words, Zhang Yi couldn't help but sit up and sighed. It turned out that during this period, not only Zhang Yi was working hard, but everyone was trying their best to make progress in order to survive. After the three major bases solved the basic survival problems, they were all trying to find ways to restore order and improve living conditions. Over at the Qingpu base, because of Li Jian's existence, their agriculture has developed very quickly. A huge underground farm has been built, and crops can be produced periodically. These crops can already maintain the basic needs of the Qingpu base. Hearing the name Li Jian, Zhang Yi rubbed his chin. "Old Li, it's been a long time since I last saw your name." In Zhang Yi's eyes, the ability that didn't have much effect before, unexpectedly, has played a big role now. He couldn't help but think that if he could help him improve his ability, perhaps in the future, this guy alone could solve the food crisis of many people. After all, Zhang Yi has a lot of seeds in his hands. The land is still fertile, but it's frozen a few meters underground. The problem of sunlight can also be solved by ultraviolet lamps. Although he is not a combat-type alien, his ability in the life category has some top-level taste. Zhang Yi now feels a little strange, quite like playing a wasteland infrastructure game, and Li Jian is the plug-in that can provide crops. However, he doesn't have so much mind to care about the lives of more than 10,000 people in Tianhai City. Once he gets involved, he can't get rid of it later, so he won't seek trouble. Let them decide how to develop over there. We won't interfere. But it's not bad to ask Li Jian to come over occasionally to help grow flowers and plant crops. Zhang Yi said with a smile. Yang Xia, wearing a pink pajamas, sat on the ground with her legs crossed, her white and tender feet slightly curled up, nodded happily, and said, I think so too. Planting some flowers and plants at home will also be a different view. And eating canned food every day, it would be great if we could get some fresh vegetables. Zhang Yi said to Yang Xinxin, Xinxin, I'll leave this matter to you to arrange. It just so happens that I'll go to their place recently and take a look, lest they make any trouble. After resting, Zhang Yi came to the living room and found Lele, who was lying on the ground resting. He reached out and grabbed the dog's ears and said with a smile, Hey, we're going back. Lele stood up quickly. Woof. Zhang Yi asked, Do you want to go back or stay here? Although Lele's combat power is average, he has an extremely keen sense of smell, which is very suitable for reconnaissance on the battlefield. Considering this point, Zhang Yi still hopes to keep it at home. But even if it doesn't want to stay in the shelter, Zhang Yi can borrow it every time he goes out in the future. But it always feels more fun to have cats and dogs at home. Lele said firmly, Boss, I still want to go back. My master is still waiting for me at home. Although Zhang Yi's living conditions are good, the loyalty of dogs to their owners will not change because of these. Zhang Yi was quite emotional, which is why he likes cats and dogs. More often, they are more trustworthy than people. Okay, I'll take you back now. Zhang Yi called the three brothers of Lou Deigh and then called Lele together, planning to go to the Chingu base. First, to hand over the three people to Xing Tian to take care of, and second, to see how they are developing over there. After opening the dimensional door, it didn't take long for them to travel hundreds of kilometers and arrive at the Chingu base in the northwest of Tianhai City. Most of the boilers in this huge steel plant have stopped working. After all, the resources that can be used as fuel have been burned up. The boilers that are still burning are basically used for heating. When Zhang Yi and his friends arrived at the Chingu base, Lele immediately raised his head excitedly and shouted woof woof twice. When the people in the Chingu base saw Zhang Yi and his friends, they hurried over attentively. Mr. Zhang, go and notify the boss. Mr. Zhang is here. Zhang Yi stepped into the Chingu base. There have been great changes here compared to the last time he came. There is no snow inside the factory building, and there is only a thin layer on the ground. It can be seen that it is carefully cleaned every day. The workers inside are wearing thick clothes and walking between the factory buildings in an orderly manner. Xing Tian, this kid, has now learned how to manage a company - managed. Zhang Yi couldn't help but be a little surprised. Not long after, Xing Tian came running over with a few people. Old Zhang, you're back. Welcome, welcome. Xing Tian shouted to the people around him, warmly welcomed the leaders to come for inspection. Everyone applauds. The workers around were very honest and simple. They welcomed Zhang Yi with their past ways of entertaining their superiors, clapping vigorously. Zhang Yi smiled and shook his head. I've returned Lele to you. It has made a great contribution to this operation. Lele ran to Xing Tian and rubbed his head affectionately. Xing Tian patted the dog's head with some reproach. Useless thing. You don't know how to grasp such a good opportunity. If you follow old Zhang, won't you eat delicious food and drink spicy drinks every day in the future? Lele made a coquettish humming sound. I really can't do anything about you. Although Xing Tian said this, he was still very happy in his heart, which can be seen from the expression on his face. Zhang Yi asked, Old Xing, you have managed very well recently. Is there any expert who can give me some advice? Note, Xing Tian, whose real name is Xing Weinan. Xing Tian smiled and said, You can't hide anything from me. Yes, I have an expert here. He turned his head and looked to his side. A short man came over. He was wrapped in thick clothes and had a scarf on his face. When he came to Zhang Yi, he took off his scarf and smiled. Mr. Zhang, long time no see. Zhang Yi saw him and immediately understood everything. Ma Wenjing, it's you. Chapter 1070, Preventing Problems from Happening. Zhang Yi brought back many people from Yanlu Island. Most of them were wealthy businessmen, officials, or fishermen like Lou Deigh, who went to Yanlu Island for vacation. In a normal society, most of them are elite talents. For example, Ma Wenjing was once one of the few big entrepreneurs. It is indeed not a problem to let such a person manage a factory with thousands of people. Xing Tian said to Zhang Yi, thanks to the people you brought us, they are now managing the factory very well. Much better than when I was there. Xing Tian is also a rough man and knows nothing about business management. However, his biggest advantage is that he knows himself and knows to ask professionals for things he can't do. Zhang Yi nodded. Let's go. Let me see what you look like now. Xing Tian and Ma Wenjing led Zhang Yi and walked around the factory casually. Zhang Yi was quite surprised at this. Now, all the factory buildings are being used. The steelmaking equipment is still in operation, and some production tools are made. There are also workshops responsible for making cold-proof equipment, such as clothes and hats. It is said to be made, but in fact it is to reshape the clothes picked up from the surroundings. Some clothes were stripped from dead bodies, and some were picked up from other warehouses or shopping malls. In addition, there are workshops dedicated to water supply and workshops for processing crops. Everything here has become a small society. Zhang Yi looked at it and nodded. I heard that Li Jian is responsible for the production of these grains? He asked. Xing Tian replied, Li Jian is now the director of our agricultural workshop. Haha. He is really a powerful figure. With him, our food problems have been solved. Zhang Yi nodded. He originally wanted to see the agricultural production there, but after thinking about it carefully, he had nothing to ask Li Jian, so he gave up the idea. In short, as long as the people here can live self-sufficiently, that is the best result. After a simple tour, Zhang Yi was very satisfied with the operation of the entire Chingu base. However, he still called Xing Tian aside and gave him a few words. Chingu base is pretty good now, but there is something I have to say. Old Xing, you should know your own abilities. Be careful that the people below you may usurp the power. Xing Tian was stunned for a moment. What do you mean by usurp the power? Zhang Yi. He explained helplessly. That is to say, be careful that the people below you are more capable than you and take your position in the future. In the past, everyone's life was not good, so they were willing to revolve around you. But now that life is on the right track, people will have greater ambitions. There are many talented people around you, and their abilities in the regular society are all better than yours. You need to be careful about being deprived of power. After listening to this, Xing Tian nodded thoughtfully, and his expression became serious. Yes, what you said makes a lot of sense. Now that I have Ma Wenjing and others, I rarely care about the factory's affairs on weekdays. I thought it would be easy. But if this goes on for a long time, I might really be sidelined. Oh, Zhang Yi, you are really too smart. Why didn't I think of it? He slapped his forehead, his eyes shining. Zhang Yi shrugged. This is why I don't want to manage your 3 major bases. It is important for people to know themselves. Zhang Yi is cautious, but he does not have the ability to manage a large organization. Even if he can manage, he doesn't like this kind of waste of energy, spending time dealing with trivial matters every day and playing power games with subordinates. Therefore, he just wants to manage his own little piece of land. Xing Tian is not as good as him. Judging from this, it is basically 100% certain that he will be sidelined in the future. Zhang Yi then gave him a little advice. Xing Tian hesitated for a while and asked Zhang Yi, but Ma Wenjing and the others are really powerful. They manage the base in perfect order. I can't possibly drive them away. Zhang Yi said lightly, this is simple. The base can't let one person dominate. You train 1 or 2 more people, let them compete with each other, and slowly weaken the influence of Ma Wenjing. And you must hold meetings with people in the base frequently to demonstrate your authority. Anyway, your military strength is here, and they can't cause much trouble. Xing Tian listened and nodded repeatedly. Okay, I'll do as you say. I'll let Ma Wenjing take a few days off these days, and then find someone else to do his job. Zhang Yi nodded. You do this first. But Ma Wenjing must be very popular now. If you ask him to step down, it may cause dissatisfaction among the people below. If there is trouble at that time, or the replacement you find is not doing a good job, you will step up and deal with those people, and then comfort Ma Wenjing, and let him continue to work. Xing Tian nodded repeatedly, and carefully remembered what Zhang Yi said. I can only tell you so much. If you can't manage it well, I don't have any good solution. It depends on how much you can understand. Zhang Yi said that he generally would not interfere with the operation of the 3 major bases. If Xing Tian can't manage the Qingpu base well, he will be replaced by others sooner or later. At that time, Zhang Yi will not stand up to defend Xing Tian. All he needs is someone to maintain the normal operation of the base. No matter who that person is. It doesn't matter to Zhang Yi. After talking about these, Zhang Yi talked about Lou Deigh and the other 2. Let them stay in the Qingpu base for a while. Xing Tian doesn't need to care about them and can let them work with ordinary workers. Also pay attention to Lou Deigh's changes. After dealing with the basic situation of Tianhai City, Zhang Yi returned home. He opened the alien space and took out the body of the dead soul. Although he is a madman, his strength is real Epsilon. How strong is his origin? Zhang Yi put his right hand on his head, and soon, a huge force poured into his body. This feeling is very wonderful, like washing away the lead and allowing oneself to transform. As he thought, the living dead soul, although the origin contained in the body is damaged, it is still the origin of Epsilon level after all. Similar to the original Kongya at the beginning. This power has improved Zhang Yi's strength. But according to his estimation, when he completely absorbs this power, he can only improve his ability index by about 1,000 points. This is not much different from Zhang Yi's estimation. But there is also a helpless thing. That is, from now on, it will be difficult for Zhang Yi to get much improvement by absorbing aliens below Epsilon. Deng Shintong and others returned to Blizzard City. Zhu Zheng received the casualty report early, and he was quite satisfied with this operation. After all, in the entire Jiangnan region, only Li Long, a captain-level alien, died in the battle. Next, the only one who needs to be dealt with is Zhang Yi. Jingwei came to the commander's office in the combat center and reported the details of the mission to Zhu Zheng. After listening, Zhu Zheng frowned slightly and asked nervously, Zhang Yi, what is his attitude? I mean his attitude towards me. Jingwei was silent for a moment and replied, he is very unhappy about your arrangement for me to monitor him. Zhu Zheng sighed and became more worried. Then didn't he do anything to you? Jingwei replied, he knew I was sent by you and he didn't do anything to me. He just asked me to follow him, and when I was on Qingdao, I was not allowed to report any intelligence on the island to you. Jingwei nodded and said, Zhu Shuai, this is my mistake at work. Zhu Zheng waved his hand. Forget it. You can't be blamed for this. After all, even I was calculated by him. At this point, a smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth. But he didn't kill you, that's a good thing. This means that there is still room for negotiation. Jingwei remained silent. Zhu Zheng didn't care too much about her life or death. She didn't tell Zhu Zheng that she was injected with truth serum by Zhang Yi and had told Zhang Yi all the plans for Blizzard City. Chapter 1070, Zhu Zheng's Melancholy. Zhu Zheng asked Jingwei, and soon after, Deng Shintong and Linghu Feishue also came to the office. They didn't know that they were being monitored by the Night Crow Squad, but they came to report the battle situation as usual. Zhu Zheng already knew everything the two reported. However, Zhu Zheng still asked the two about their views on Zhang Yi. He didn't choose to come back with you. Why do you think it was? The two secretly looked at each other, thinking about their own things. Linghu Feishue frowned and said lightly, I think he probably thinks that he doesn't need to report anything to you now. After all, he is the noble Epsilon now. Linghu Feishue didn't know the cause and effect. She only knew that Zhang Yi deceived everyone, obtained the source of God alone, and let them go to the island to fight.
So she had some bad opinions about Zhang Yi.
Deng Shintong smiled and said, maybe he was tired after fighting on the battlefield for a long time, so he wanted to reunite with his family first. Besides, there are some problems that the region has to help him solve. Zhu Zheng laughed. He tapped the table with his right hand and nodded with a smile. Yes, he made a great contribution this time. Well, getting the source of God is the biggest contribution. However, he did cause me a lot of trouble. The East China Sea region will have to spend a lot of effort to appease their emotions. And Shengjing region, we have to write a report to them. Zhu Zheng sighed and said with a wry smile, it's not easy for me to be the commander. These words are from the heart. But if Zhang Yi can completely become his side, then all his negative emotions will be swept away. To put it bluntly, he is still not so confident about Zhang Yi, the lone wolf. Okay, you guys go back and have a good rest first. You all worked hard on this mission. Deng Shintong and Ling Hu Feishua said, then we will withdraw first. The two left Zhu Zheng's office. Zhu Zheng supported his cheek with his left hand and looked at the communicator on the table eagerly. Zhang Yi. Hey you. Why can't I use you? It's fine if I can't use you, but you are so powerful. The people below are too powerful. It's hard for me as a leader to deal with it. Oh, forget it. Let me bow my head this time. He woke up the communicator. Xiao AI, help me contact Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi was waiting for Zhu Zheng's call. He needed Zhu Zheng to express an attitude, first of all, to apologize for his previous breach of promise, and also to express an attitude about Jingwei's surveillance. This is not about being petty, but about letting others know your bottom line. Otherwise, repeated tolerance will only lead to others getting more and more. Zhang Yi was at home, seeing Zhu Zheng's call invitation, and waited for it to ring 3 times before answering. Zhu Zheng's amiable face appeared in front of him. Haha Zhang Yi, congratulations. You have successfully obtained the source of God and become an Epsilon-level alien. This is a blessing for our entire Jiangnan district. I am here on behalf of the Jiangnan district and all the senior executives of Blizzard City to congratulate you. Zhang Yi smiled faintly. Thank you, Zhu Shuai. Zhu Zheng seemed not to notice this cold attitude. You are back. Why don't you come to our Blizzard City? I have asked someone to prepare a celebration banquet to welcome you and celebrate. You are now the greatest contributor to the Jiangnan district. How can there be no ceremonies? If others know about this, they will think that our Jiangnan district does not value talents. Zhang Yi smiled, haha. Zhu Shuai, it's not that I don't want to go back, but I'm worried that some people will be unhappy after I go back. Zhu Zheng said with a straight face, hey, what are you talking about? We are all so happy. Who would be unhappy? Zhang Yi curled his lips and said slowly, I heard that you cultivated an alien named Zhiyu there? You have a new love, and I'm afraid you have forgotten me, the old one. It is said that she was cloned from the cells of my old friend, Yuan Kongya. I guess now that she has been cultivated by the entire region, her strength will also improve by leaps and bounds. At this point, Zhu Zheng naturally heard the dissatisfaction in Zhang Yi's heart. Since Zhu Yu appeared, Zhu Zheng's attitude towards Zhang Yi has become a little colder. Especially when Zhang Yi returned from the sea, Zhu Zheng did not mention that the source of God was given priority to him. He even sent Jingwei to monitor him, in order to prevent Zhang Yi from monopolizing the source of God. The smile on Zhu Zheng's face slowly disappeared. At this moment, his face was full of sadness. From the high-spirited commander of the region, he turned back into a vicissitudes of life old man. Zhang Yi, I was wrong in this matter, I'm sorry. But the region needs to be balanced, and one person can't dominate. Zhang Yi interrupted him and said, I'm not here to listen to big principles. You have your considerations, but I also have my own ideas. I won't sacrifice for anyone. This is not an excuse. Zhu Zheng and Zhang Yi knew each other for a long time, so he certainly understood Zhang Yi's temperament. Playing the emotional card completely, it's a waste of time. It's better to get real money. Well, to express my apology, The district has prepared a large amount of strategic materials for you. You can come and take them at any time. Aren't your friends at home still at a low level? I don't think you want them to hold you back. The district will provide them with the best resources to help them improve their strength, and you don't need to worry about the problems in the East China Sea district. I will deal with them. At this point, Zhu Zheng sighed. Those guys are difficult to deal with. After all, this time, they lost a lot of elites, including Bai Hu in the Four Spirits Fleet and the two fleet captains Bai Zhe and Xieji. Not to mention that you killed their chief of operations Li Tianyang in front of so many people. Isn't this a slap in their face? The old guy Li Guangxiao just called me and scolded me. I guess the district will have to bleed a lot this time to appease his emotions. When it comes to this, Zhang Yi can't suppress the smile at the corner of his mouth. These troublesome problems were deliberately created by him. There is no lack of revenge on Zhu Zheng. He also knew that Zhu Zheng could only swallow his anger at this moment, because he needed Zhang Yi's support. An Epsilon-level alien was almost above everything else in terms of strategy, and it was worth it even if he paid a higher price. Zhu Zheng was sighing there, actually playing the victim to calm Zhang Yi's anger.